Welcome to the Rusted Garden Homestead. This video is all about the basics for growing cucumbers, so I'm going to give you an overview. Back there is a standard cucumber plant. Will continue to grow and vine. Gets quite large. I believe that is a straight 8. Growing in this 150-gallon root pouch. I sell these root pouches at my seed shop if you're interested. This is a bush variety cucumber. So you want to be thinking about the type of cucumber. There are many different varieties and general types, but I'm just going to go with a basic bush variety, which stays smaller, and then your standard variety, which will continue to grow and vine. And you want to kind of plan which variety you're planting. So in this space, this is a 150-gallon root pouch, growing up concrete wire mesh. This is for reinforcing concrete that I got at Home Depot. I just drop it in halfway into the root pouch, and I grow the bush variety up there. Bush variety is smaller, very productive, perfect for containers. You want to be thinking about the space you have. In theory, you don't have to trellis your cucumbers. You could let them run on the ground. That's what they do in nature. They send out lots of side shoots or suckers or production stems. I'll be talking about that in the next video if you want to subscribe, on how I prune my cucumber plants. You don't have to prune them, but it does make sense for at least pruning out the bottom, and you can see that I did start the process to let air flow through there. But these are the bush varieties, and I have 3 plants planted right there, and then there's a nice cucumber coming in. 3 feet, I have another 2 or 3 plants. So that's one way that you can plant them. 2 or 3 plants to a space, more for the bush variety. Couple feet of space, 2 or 3 more plants. Now you could do 1 plant, 1 plant, 1 plant, 1 plant. Don't over stress about that. But in a space like this is probably 5 feet wide, 3 to 5 plants is perfect. Here's a little pollinator up there. That's what you're looking for too, is that you want to make sure you have the pollinators coming into your garden, because you're going to have lots of cucumbers. This is a cucumber, female plant, or female flower. Female flowers always have the little cucumber underneath. This will only develop if pollen from a male flower gets into the female flower. That's why sometimes you see a cucumber start, then it gets a brown tip, it dies off. It wasn't properly pollinated. And you'll have a mix of male and female flowers in your cucumber plant, or I should say on your cucumber plant. And the main difference is, let's see if you can see that one. That's a male flower. There's no little cucumber behind there where my fingertip is. So you'll have a combination of male and female flowers. When you first start growing, maybe you have all male flowers, maybe you have all female flowers. The plant will work it out. There's nothing that you can do to change the way the plant is producing male or female flowers. So as your plant is growing, you want to keep an eye on it. I've already got in here and started just pinching off. I pinch off the leaves. Like this leaf is beat up. When it's beat up, I just pinch it off right there. You can prune all the way down to the bottom. You can see, a dead fruit. Prune however you wish. I don't mind pinching the leaves off. Some people cut the leaf all the way down to the growing stem. Perfectly fine. Now, when I pinch the leaves, one tip I recommend is I will come out, I will prune this entire plant, then I spray the plant, the undersides, the top sides, with a peppermint oil spray. I have plenty of recipes on my channel if you want to look that up, but it's basically 1 teaspoon to 2 teaspoons of peppermint oil in water, 1 gallon of water with some soap. I spray under here because it masks the scents of the damaged leaves. Sometimes that prevents bad insects from finding the plant, because they often find your plants when you pick a fruit. A scent goes out, they kind of hone in on it. It's also really good at controlling spider mites. That's a problem that I get with my plant. So the other thing I recommend is when you're growing any vegetables, but especially cucumbers, just take notes when you put them in the ground, take notes on the temperature, when diseases show up, when insects show up, and that will help you develop a plan to take care of them. So this plant needs a little bit more pruning. I like to eventually take out the leaves on the bottom. That gets rid of a haven for insects and problems. Lets air circulate through. But you can see it's doing really well. Let's go over to another area. So this is the flip side of the root pouch. That's the concrete wire mesh. Now if you didn't have trellising, they could fall down, you know, come out of the pot, crawl around your ground, but you're going to be stepping on them, and it's just a problem. All those leaves lowered to the ground, I think, create more of an issue because there's more moisture, more humidity, creates more of a haven for insects, as I was saying. So I have cucumbers that are forming. There's actually 3. So I would get in and see this leaf, it's in the way. Find the stem, pinch it, remove it. And that's all I really do. Again, here's the stem. You could cut all the way back there, but I don't want to get into possibly messing up the flower or the stem along there. So I just remove it from there. Scabs over, does perfectly fine. The bush varieties are perfect for your containers. Again, I want to stress, you want at least 20 gallons. You can always get by with something smaller if you really stay up on the watering and feeding. So when you're setting up a container or you're planting in the ground, there's 1,000 ways to do it. I would love to tell you, here's the perfect way, always works. I have a video on planting cucumbers and squash. I will link that. Pretty much covers it, but there's 1,000 ways to do it. You basically want well-draining, moisture-holding soil in your container. In your ground, you want it to be kind of loose. You can add in compost if you have it. You can add in peat moss, but you just want something that is loose, holds water, allows for good drainage, all that kind of stuff. When you put a cucumber seed into the ground, the minimum you want to do is a couple handfuls of any organic granular fertilizer around the 555 NPK. Just sprinkle it around. Take your shovel, your spade, turn it over, mix it in. You have a nice starting base for your cucumber plants. You can put in seeds, you can put in transplants. If you have compost, shovelful of compost or 2, mix it in. Nothing fancy. Once you have it planted, give it a drink of any organic water-soluble fertilizer. I recommend fish emulsion. That's a nice 511 NP and K. You want to give them nitrogen when they're first starting off to really get that vine growing. So coming over on this side, there is a single plant, the Market More, and it's being trellised right up here. 2 or 3 feet over, there's another Market More right in there, and you can see a cucumber. They're all just starting to produce. There's another one. Now, basic setup, like I said right in there. A good idea, that's grass clippings, is mulch over the surface of your cucumber plants. They send out tons of surface roots. You want to keep them as moist as a deep soaking for the main root system right there. This whole space should be soaked with water. When it gets warm, it's 95 today, you know, you're really starting your summer. You want to be watering these at least 3 times a week. The secret is not the soil prep or the amendments you put in. It's consistent watering of your cucumber plants and tomato plants, most of your plants in your garden. The place where people fail most is they're just not watering enough. So you're going to be wanting to water this 3 times a week. Soak water around the base. I have a video for that. I will put in the video description on showing you how to measure how much water you're giving a plant. It's a couple of inches at the main area, and then you want to water the surface. Mulch, consistent watering will make for really happy plants. And you can see how I've been removing the leaves from down here. And when I come out, I do inspect the plants, see what's going on. These are something that I might remove because they're down towards the bottom. Over on this side, we have the pickling cucumbers starting to take off. And I'm beginning, there's a cucumber almost ready to pick. There's actually 2 in there. 3 more right in there. 2 more, or 1 more right down there. This space has to be pruned out. You want to just have enough airflow going so the airflow dries the leaves, stops humidity, like a microclimate of humidity forming around the leaves, where sometimes it's easier for powdery mildew and other diseases to take hold. Keep trellising upward, prune as you need to. And again, that will be in the next video. Feeding. So once we set up the soil, however you want to do it, with the basic granular compost, however you want to set up your soil. If you've been doing this for a while, you're going to be good to go because your soil is going to have plenty of nutrients in there. After that first watering of fish emulsion, I may water it again in 2 weeks. Plant's looking good, growing well, again in another 2 weeks with the fish emulsion. And just keep an eye on it. If your plants start getting a little yellow, number one, think about how often you're watering. That's usually the issue. They don't have enough water. If they're looking a little yellow, you can start with the fish emulsion every 7 to 10 days when the plants are getting bigger, and just keep that nitrogen going. All right, one more place to look. Well, actually a couple more examples. You may not want to have 4 or 5 different plantings of cucumbers throughout your garden. Maybe you don't have a lot of space, or the more that you plant throughout the garden, the more time it takes to go to each plant, tend, and manage. Just think about how many cucumbers do you need. So right in this corner, I have 2 straight 8 cucumber plants growing up the side of this cattle panel, and they're doing really well. There's no cucumbers on there yet. 2 plants are in there, and you can see that I'm pinching the leaves off and opening up the space slowly as this plant grows. Now, you don't want to plant, unless you really love cucumbers and have a lot of friends, you don't want to put in 20 or 30 cucumber plants at once, because they're all going to produce at the same time, and you're going to be harvesting, you know, dozens of cucumbers each day. This plant doesn't have any cucumbers yet because it's younger than the rest of them in my garden, and this went in maybe 2 weeks later. So one thing I recommend is, if you want to keep cucumbers going through the whole season, don't just count on one plant to make it from, you know, end of May all the way into September. They're going to die off. Remove damaged plants that are beat up, put in new plants. We're going to go over to some transplants actually in a second. By staggering the plantings, as these plants produce, maybe die off, this plant's coming into its own, it begins to produce, and the whole goal is not to keep one plant thriving. If you can do that, great, but most people can't because of the weather temperatures, the diseases, and the insects. But if you stagger in your plantings throughout the season, you will get a continuous supply of cucumbers from fresh, healthy plants. I'll talk more about that in a second. I do recommend starting cucumbers, squash, zucchini, even pumpkins in small containers like this. This is basil for another video. I sell these at my seed shop if you want to do this. By having transplants grown in a small space like this, it's real easy to take care of. You know, there might be 6, 8 cucumber plants mixed in here with the pumpkins and zucchini. I just stick them on my deck, water them, keep them managed. These are put in on June 16th. Today is June 29th, I believe, and these are ready to go in the ground. Some of these will go where I just pulled pea plants out. So by starting transplants, you're getting them growing, getting a 2-week jump on their growth, while maybe you're waiting for different plants to come out of your garden or to get some beds ready. These are also ready in case something happened to the plants that I have out there. Once these go into the ground, I'm going to start another round of backup cucumbers, squash, and zucchini plants. And that's one of the goals, again, I want to stress, is that it's not about just taking one plant or a group of plants and making them survive May, June, July through August. It's about keeping healthy plants going. Sometimes you got to rip out the dying plants that you can't save, put in the new transplants. This is a great way to have backups. These are bush variety cucumbers growing in the 20-gallon root pouches that I was talking about. There's actually 2 tomato cages in there for trellising. So when you're growing in containers, you're going to probably have to water these plants once a day. That's why you want that 20-gallon size. That helps with watering. But when these plants are to size like they are now, it's 95 degrees today, they can suck the moisture out of that soil really, really quickly. If the soil dries out completely, the roots dry, it damages the plant production. So you're going to have to water maybe daily, depending on how hot it gets and how big your plants are. You're also going to want to feed these more often. So when I was talking about the earth beds, you know, depending on what's going on, every 14 days, you may want to water these with a dilute water-soluble fertilizer 1 time a week. They're also going to pull out the fertilizer regularly. So keep an eye on them. If the leaves are getting a little bit yellow, that means they probably need more water-soluble fertilizer. Just keep the fertilizer going every 7 to 10 days, water regularly, and you can be really successful at growing cucumbers in containers. So this is one of my display gardens. I have cucumber plants right here. There's actually 4 of them, a single seed spaced out about every foot. and they're growing up the fence, and then they're going to go over to the cattle panel. You really do want that trellis because you can see that they're going to send out other production vines. They're going to want to take over a space. When I prune, I'll be taking the cucumber plant that's growing through there, moving it this way, removing some of the additional vines that are coming out of the joints of the plants. I'll teach you about all that in the next video. And just kind of shaping this up to be a place where I'm going to get lots of production. I'll have a green, healthy plant, but also be managing for pests and disease and managing the size. I don't think these just started flowering. I don't see any cucumbers in there yet, but I can just show you again. That's the male flower. You can see there's no cucumber right there, just a stem. That's how you know it's a male flower. Male flower, male flower, and male flower. So sometimes your cucumber plant needs to get the female flowers going. Again, you can't do anything to speed that along. You can see one right down there, so that's good, and there's a cucumber starting. So this plant is working it out. I love cucumbers. I look forward to my first bowl of cucumber, tomato, and onion salad out of the garden every year. Final tip, check your plants regularly because when they start producing cucumbers, they come in fast. You want to pick the cucumber when it's dark green or light green, you know, cylindrical cucumber shape. If you leave it on the vine, the skin actually starts turning yellow, will even turn orange. They get really plump. The seeds are going from immature seeds to mature seeds, and that's the whole goal of the cucumber plant. It's to produce fruit and seed so that it can reproduce and the plant can go on. If you leave too many fruits on that are over maturing, sometimes the plant production slows down. The plant thinks that it made it, so it's not producing, you know, cucumbers for you to harvest. So keep an eye on them and pull them off regularly. Tip I want to stress that I think is most important for growing cucumbers, it's not the soil setup or the compost or the fertilizer. It's actually water, water, water. Water these more often than you think. They're going to stay healthy and green, and you'll get great production. Thanks for watching, and please check out my seed shop at therustedgarden.com.